We're ready.
He does, eh?
Welcome to the Policy Committee meeting tonight, 4th of September. We've done the health and safety issues. So we have had an apology for Councillor Carey, and I move that the apology be accepted and a leave of absence being granted. Councillor Bentley, will beat you to it. So Councillor Bentley, call, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. So do any of us wish to declare a conflict of interest with any items on today's agenda? And if we think so, we should alert the governance advisor. We don't have any members of the public wishing to speak today, so we'll move on to item 4, appointment of the District Licensing Committee Commissioners. And just in case anybody is wondering, the nomination of Kate Thompson is a different Kate Thompson to the Kate Thompson that we know. And the CVs of the candidates are attached for our information. Your Worship.
Just say, because this is quite a long-winded.
Yeah.
In simple terms, our DLC, all but one of the members was involved in the economic stimulus package, which the particular company who is applying for a license was part of. So there is a conflict. All the DLC members have a conflict, barring one, who was Councillor Carey, who could sit on it. And so we would need to appoint 2 commissioners to do their hearing, since our total, barring one member, so we can have 3, we'll have 2 commissioners and Councillor Carey who can sit on that. But the conflict comes purely from the fact that Councillor myself, Councillor Wheeler, Councillor and Councillor Collins had another complementary work, done some work for a company that's supplied. So it means that independent commissioners. So we need to have that, and there is some urgency in it. So that's where it's coming back. We're quite happy. We'll be able to continue. The DLC will continue, and in future we can do the hearings with no conflict. That's the issue. Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question around that. Do we perhaps, if Councillor Carey has commitments, are we then back to square one with this? Do we need a spare person in the event that
well, we're in his dates with the commissioners.
so 2 would be sufficient?
No, you need 3. Yep.
But surely,
Yes, Councillor Bentley.
surely in that situation, that the schedule a hearing accordingly, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
It's not.
see everyone. Yeah.
Very well.
But through the chair, we did check with Councillor Carey before the appointment was completed.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Bentley.
I'm happy to move the first option.
So we're talking about option about 2 and about it's making
The recommended candidates.
Oh, yeah. So you are recommending that we
I'm
make the
making
board
the
with
recommendations.
yeah. Okay, any discussion on that? Emma?
I'm happy to second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say something. Okay, so if there's nothing else, all those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. So now we have to receive. Yeah, so now we're moving on to 3, receive and note the report, approve Kate Thompson and William Acton for inclusion.
So, sorry, Chair. When I said I'm happy to move option 1, I was meaning as referenced further down in the paper of the recommended candidates. I was
Page 8.
Yeah, on page 8. I was moving all of the recommendations.
Yeah.
Yep. But well, all.
Ah, that's what you meant by
Because,
option
yeah,
1.
there are a number, Chair.
I'm looking at the first page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so back to the first page, and then I'd move, want to move all of them.
And I was happy to see all of them, that was my understanding.
It's 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if we have no other, we'll move, so it's 2 and 3.
Yes. Paragraphs 2 and 3, for clarity's sake.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? And we'll move on to dangerous, affected and insanitary buildings policy. And would the officers like to make any comment on this?
Chair, just note that I've got the team here in case there were matters of process in detail. I guess really just the overarching comment there about the paper is simply, we have an existing policy, the committee members may recall, there was a drafted proposal. So we started our review process and a draft was proposed and we advanced that. It's detailed in the report. What we have now, this paper is about, again, full decision has been sought here in public council in relation to following the public consultation engagement process on a 2024 revision and rewrite of that policy. And in short, it simply reflects very, very recent guidance that came out a number of weeks ago from DB. It also reflects some of the auditing of our operations here. So this really just represents very current, very live practice.
Thank you. So questions, Councillor Wheeler?
Mr. Director, so this dangerous, affected and sanitary buildings policy, how's it compared to other councils in New Zealand? Is this as stringent, as strict as it, or not?
Look, I'll head to the team because they were actually involved in all this.
Well, through you, Chair, we've reviewed a number of policies from around the country, including recently consulted and adopted policies. This is both based on ones that our operations building control team found that they think works well, and then subsequently reviewed against the MB guidance that came out at the end of July. So we've based it on other policies that our team thinks are working well, and then additional things from the MB guidance. So the policy is really prescriptive. What can be included in the policy is very prescriptive by the Act itself. So there's not a lot of wiggle room in what can or cannot be within the policy.
It's a lot more, it's better clarity on.
Yes, one thing that was included in the MB guidance, which we have included in this new policy, is a flow chart, which you'll see is in appendix 1 of the policy itself. It's a little link that we'll go through, which we'll include in full in the policy.
So through Chair, so certainly building owners in the community will have a much clearer understanding now of the position of the council and then specifically the building team in relation to its units.
Good. Councillor Swales?
I just have a question, and it's on page 31, 1.7, economic impact policy. So the council receives several complaints of building non-compliance every year. However, these generally do not result in the building meeting the threshold to be deemed dangerous or insanitary. So we're saying that this rewrite, whilst it meets the changes of legislation that India put out, will it address these that fall in that not quite meet the threshold? Is that what we're doing? We're raising the threshold, but also identifying what it is specifically.
Chair and team, I'll pick that one up. So dangerous and insanitary in of itself is a high threshold to meet in the Act, and in terms of case law and determinations that have been carried out in relation to those matters. So those thresholds have not changed. What the policy does is it more clearly reflects how we undertake those duties, the kind of information that we gather, how we collect it, how we store it, and things that were missing in our previous policy, we've fixed those gaps. So under the old policy, a building owner or a member of in the community would not be clear about how we actually conduct our activities. So this policy cannot and does not change those high tests in the Act, but rather makes it clear to anyone that's interested, be it building owner, community member, or yourselves, as to how we actually carry out these regulatory functions for the city.
I have a subsequent question. So following on from that and collecting the data, and if they don't keep the threshold, do we hold that data in case nothing happens to that building and it therefore escalates? If we do, does the building owner have the right or access to that information that we hold? Just listening to you, the second part of this is the cost is negligible, but it doesn't sound as if it is if we're going to these extent to get this information. A few questions.
And sorry, Tim, jump in as well, but apologies if I'm missing any as I respond to those through you, Chair. That reference there, I suppose, is about sort of an above the line or invoiced cost. Obviously, there is a cost of time.
Yeah.
And of course, you recall our funding and finance policy in terms of how we obviously how we control the costs in the space. There are real costs, obviously. I think there was a question in there about the information we collect, and is that available to the building owners? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's public information. And to be fair, we often get requests from interested members of the community and also tenants as well. Sorry, there was another question.
Is that information then released if it doesn't meet the criteria that it's a dangerous and insanitary, and do we still hold it in a public arena even though it hasn't hit? I mean, we've gone to the point of collecting that data.
Yep.
So it's, how do we hold it? Do we hold it or do we not?
So through you, Chair, we do hold the information. Obviously, there's some sensitivity about live and ongoing investigations.
Yes.
So there is always a suite of I guess there's a range of non-compliance to reach the threshold of dangerous, insanitary, or in terms of an adjacent adjoining building affected. Yeah. That's a high threshold. Now, there are other enforcement tools that we can and do regularly engage.
Right.
And so when the team conduct that investigation, they will look at the degree of non-compliance and a range of things, you know, also the whether it is incidental and accidental, or whether this is sort of a repeat and recidivist sort of behaviour where we have escalated tools. But ultimately, if the matter is not going, it can, unfortunately, then reach the thresholds. And we do have, and it's sensitive because it's subject to ongoing investigation at the moment and enforcement. But we do have examples of that in the city. So we do collect that information based on the investigation outcomes that are obtained and recorded by the investigators. They then make an informed choice about the appropriate enforcement tools, of which dangerous and insanitary is at that far end of the spectrum. That answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? No, well, if not, I this time will move that we recommend that the Policy Committee notes that under Standing Order 6.6, forthwith decisions, Council has delegated authority to a majority of its members the power to make a forthwith decision, and that such decisions may be exercised during a meeting of the Council Committee, which is us today. If the Mayor agrees that the matter must be acted upon as a matter of urgency.
I agree.
And the decision must be unanimous. So I'm moving that, seconded by Councillor Carson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And then next part is that we recommend as a forthwith decision that we preferred option number 1. We receive and note the report and the statement of proposal for the dangerous, affected and insanitary buildings policy, which is attachment 1 to this report, an associated summary of information, which is attachment 2. We approve the statement of proposal and the summary of information for consultation, and we authorise officers to make any consequential amendments to the document based on the direction provided at this meeting to correct any minor typographical, editorial, arithmetical, or formatting errors that are identified. Do I have a seconder for that? His Worship the Mayor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried unanimously. All right, so let's move on to the Director's Report, Planning and Regulatory Services. And do we have any, anything the Director would like to highlight for this?
Yeah, thank you for that. Look, I mean, I guess this is largely about reporting what's happening across the team. Obviously, members will see there's a lot happening. And we discuss this fairly regularly, just simply to say the team are working quite dynamically beyond just simply district plan change matters and I'll call them in inverted commas and standards sort of regional planning matters. And as you just heard in the last item on the agenda, other operational policy areas, certainly in relation to the central government-led reform, it's very busy, it's very agile, and certainly in terms of just preparing this information for you today, things are just moving live in the background. But no particular updates on those matters. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so any questions of the Director? Your Worship?
Yeah, just a comment on the page 49, the Wellington Regional Industrial Land Supply Study. You know, that's been an ongoing issue for a number of years, and it was made clear at the regional leadership group late last year or early this year how important that was. And now I know that it's on hold, and it's just bizarre. I mean, it just shows you that how ineffective that regional leadership group is. And yet to have something, and I know at the time it was discussed how urgent it was. There are actual companies leaving this region because there is nowhere for them to go. And we put it on hold. And I have no doubt, or I do know that the aggregate study is important, but to think that now that's put on hold, which is commercially the basis of the whole region. So I think we need to maybe pass it on to the powers.
Very Chair, happy to certainly also feed that back in through the senior staff.
Thank you very much, Director. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Ultra.
Thank you, through the Chair. I just wanted to ask about the industrial land in terms of old buildings. So is there much demand that can be taken up by the repair or replacement of old buildings? Is there much, do we know how many we have in Upper Hutt that are reaching the end of their usable life?
Through you, Chair, I'll cast my eyes towards the team in case they want to comment on that. And if I get a positive reaction from them, I'll send it know. Look, I don't to hand have that information. I could perhaps inquire further somewhere between the economic development team and perhaps the building team around approaches around reuse, repurposing of buildings, but I don't know that that's data that we collect, so I'm not sure that I could really report on that directly.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone? Oh, yes, Councillor Swales.
So I'm going to go to the Greater Wellington Natural Resource Plan Change number 1. And so with regard to, and it's paragraph 7, so where are we at with that? Because I read this paper and it talks about that the regional council are pushing ahead with this, but then later on in this paper, I see that there are some national plans that will have significant impact on that. What the hell's going on?
Director.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Look, I'll pick up an initial response to that, but I sense our acting policy manager would like to go in there as well. Look, I mean, I've had this conversation certainly inside a week with my colleague at Regional Council, expressing again, and you have all made it clear to us through both the submissions of this organisation and our other engagement with our regional colleagues. I describe that the very uncomfortable fit that there appears to be with some of these matters continuing to advance. I have not read it, but there was a paper that I understand went to Regional Council that considered the merits or not in advancing that particular matter that you're querying there, Deputy Mayor. Look, we continue both, and Suze may want to comment on this, but we certainly continue to express officer views clearly, both colleague to colleague directly in our peers in the organisations, but also across the regional planning managers group. I'm not sure whether Suze would like to comment any further on that.
No, yeah, I constantly raise it at the regional planning managers group, that sort of uncomfortable inconsistency between obviously what they're pushing ahead with and what's coming out of central government. Yeah, so we were very alive to that situation, and we consistently use every single forum that we can to have those conversations with our regional.
Because when I go from that original statement on page 48 and then I go to page 55 and I look at the national direction and all of the things that you've put in there, it certainly worries me that the regional council are going to land somewhere and then we're being pushed through the Wellington Regional Leaders Forum with regard to housing, industrial property, and all those other things that we've got an implementation plan that's happening, and it all seems to be at odds. And so is there a cost that's going to be incurred for us as a council? Because that's what my fear is. We've landed our long-term plan, and if we go ahead with what the regional plan says that we have to be cognizant of and abide by, as we all know, Resource Management Act, there's a hierarchy. Where does that leave us?
Through you, Chair. Look, you're spot on with the question, and the answers that this council, both in officer submissions, but also from yourselves as council submissions, they've been well articulated. There are certainly from a financial prudence, from a 101 LGA perspective, it's uncomfortable because we are talking about officer time in every territorial authority, and look, that's only from councils. I mean, obviously, any interested person, whether it's a landholder, whether they're interested in a resource, they run some kind of business or community entity. Certainly, it's statingly obvious, but to have some regional plan provisions heading in, simply put, one direction when we have clear signals about another direction, regardless of anyone's view about the merits on either side of that, leads to rework and time. And that is ultimately, as you are obviously getting to and interested in, that is officer time. That's a cost to the ratepayer, and that's happening across the region. And I don't think it's hard to make a case that that doesn't feel particularly prudent.
Not at this time. Through you, Chair, I have another, I'd like to now leave that and go to the Wellington Regional Leaders Forum. So, and the future development strategy and the implementation plan of that. When I look at the conversation, paragraph 25, where we talk about part 2, the implementation of those plans and what it is there, and then we look at paragraph 26, which is part 3 of the implementation plan. So do we lead any of those projects as a council? Have we taken the lead on those? And if we have, what projects have we said that we would take the lead on? Obviously, we would be supporting a lot of those projects as a collective of the councils that are involved. Is there any way that we could have a bit of a snapshot of a timeline of when these implementation plans have been identified and when we're looking at delivering them? Would be really good. And I don't want to get into the operations of it, but a helicopter view from a governance perspective would be very, very helpful.
Through you, Chair, and the team may very much want to comment in the space, but a high level comment is we don't have a more refined level of timeline on delivery than what's been published. What we have is you perhaps are, and other members are perhaps well aware, is we already have a list of projects right across the region that in some cases, including here in the city, may now no longer be representative of actually priority projects across the region. So certainly from an operational perspective, we're engaging in those conversations around, the process to actually update what's in the FDS. But I might hand to the team or invite the team in case they want to make more comment here.
No, I think from our point of view, through you, Chair, the implementation projects that come from this council are largely based on those major projects through the long-term plan. And as our director said, there are some projects on there that are no longer necessarily valid, and so we're actually in the process of updating. And my understanding from the officers is that this is a live sort of document, and so we can have those conversations around providing those updates as and when they come through. So that's my understanding.
Yeah, councillor Bentley.
My understanding of the implementation plan is basically what this committee has done is just collated all the work that's already going on, and it's just coordinating rather than actually doing anything. We are the delivery agents of what the respective councils are. Is that correct? Yeah.
Through Chair, that's correct. And also other partners depending on the project right across the region.
So other than putting it all in one nice document, what benefits are there of that if councils have the ultimate say in their own TAs?
Through you, Chair, I don't believe I'm the right person to illustrate and communicate what the intended benefits are. If it was useful, perhaps we could invite those persons responsible for the program to answer those questions. I do just remind everyone that the FDS, it is a statutory beast because of using lots of initials, a national direction organ that sits at the back of the RMA. So it's a statutory requirement, but I guess degrees of detail and how much work and return on investment are natural questions from a governance perspective. Yeah,
it's box ticking really, isn't it? Because there's actually no coordination other than collating all the projects. There's no councils aren't talking to each other saying, oh, well, you're doing that, let's do this. To a point. Because people are just going to do what they want in their own area.
Through Chair, look, I do want to, as I've said, I don't believe it's my role to defend those particular programs. But I would say that when you do get down into that level of really sort of into the projects and purpose and wanting good outcomes across the region, I do genuinely believe that there is a real spirit of wanting to work together at that sort of project level, delivery level, and thinking about strategically, where is housing, where is natural capital, where are main trunks and those sorts of things. I do believe there is genuine partnership there, but certainly I can see from a governance perspective, it may not always feel particularly transparent about what is the return on investment on a lot of boards around a table.
Councillor Swales again.
I just want to pick up on what my colleague is saying, because, we put some money into this collective thing, but if we're actually solely responsible for delivering what's in our own LTP, it does beg me to question exactly what Councillor Bentley has said. And then when I go to page 52, it talks about under housing, Wellington Regional Leadership Committee will develop a guidance document for the implementation of placemaking principles. Well, I think our officers do that anyway as we're reviewing our district plan, that we've already started going through some of those components when we've gone through our rezoning and things. And then, all councils to advocate for a move to zero waste future. Well, that's mandated. We've got a waste minimisation plan that is there, that gets reviewed six yearly, and we're in the implementation. So I'm not quite sure. It does take me back to the original conversation or comments that His Worship said here about, they're not focusing on the right things, because aggregate with all the building that's happening at the moment in our district and having to transport it as far away as we do to bring it in to meet those huge developments that are happening just doesn't make sense that we're protecting.
Through you, Chair, and if I may just make sort of a broad comment in relation to that. Look, certainly from certainly from an officer's perspective, look, we certainly support the sort of the kind of cut through questions we are hearing from yourselves from a governance perspective, and certainly support you as our governors, continuing to raise those sorts of questions ultimately on return on investment and purpose, because as quite rightly identified, Deputy Mayor, that many of these things are things that we do, or they are in statute, and I do want to express to the committee that genuinely there is really good will to work together at that officer level, sort of planning manager level, certainly my own colleagues as well. But when we get into that delivery space, there is a lot of sharing of information that happens anyway. You may be asking, well, do we need this to enable that? And I would say that DNA exists in those good officers across the sector already.
So are we, I get a sense that we're somewhat dissatisfied, or, do we need to give some direction to the officers about this, or the chief executive about priorities? What is it we're actually looking for here?
Well,
Yep, Councillor Benton.
I think the scope of it is so big that the benefits of having a central secretariat function are so small. Is that this is going to be delivered in each area anyway, and that if the regional secretariat doesn't have the power to stop a council from doing a development that doesn't fit this criteria, or to force a council to do it, then there's no benefit of them, because councils just do what they want to do. So ultimately, it's a question of what the purpose of the regional future development strategy is. But I guess it's, I don't know, from there. It's a thing from the last
maybe it's
government.
a bit more refined in terms of what do we think our role is?
Well, it's what synergies actually can we get from doing it regionally?
Chair, can I say, to just go on what my colleague was saying, Councillor Bensley, I think originally the intent, and I think we need to go back to the original intent or purpose of what this was. And I thought, please correct me, CEO and your worship, is I thought it was around getting a district plan that was comparable for all of us in the region, so that any developer, whatever space, housing, whatever, identify, that was the intent, but it seems to have been morphing into something just a lot more. And the parameters of it are just growing and growing and growing. When in actual fact, we do that anyway with our own review of our district plan that touches on, a whole lot of things. Like we look at conservation, the SNAs are coming into it, which is, we've got to wait for central government, which is now 2030, but we've got to have something by 2028, and when I look at the legislation, I'm just not quite sure that maybe we just need to go back to the intent. And as His Worship said, why are you putting pause on economic development when we're looking at making, we've been told, go back to our core business, not spend money on some nice to haves, and we're not actually delivering.
Chair, I
Yes,
must
would you like to respond?
just make just a little bit of comment there. Look, and I won't try to contextualise it. Genesis, I wasn't practising in Wellington during its Genesis here. But there might have been a little bit of mixing there of some other changes around national planning standards, which was around standardisation of plans and so on. But look, I think my observation has been that the purpose, return on investment, and the benefits that are really, truly being delivered, that's been something that I've seen this particular committee of council and council generally, examine closely and wrestle with that. And look, there are very high value elements such as, and I always want to point this out, the HBA is a really great example of a necessary, cost-effective mechanism for us to obtain good, useful data that we need going forward right across the region and for the city. And it would be expensive for us to go it alone. But look, it's certainly an issue that the committee returns to, and perhaps it might warrant some further exploration about different ways to effectively just I guess, review, purpose and value and express that through the different fora, whether that's regional leadership committee, senior staff group, and perhaps chief executives and so on. That would just be my suggestion, Chair.
Your worship, have you a comment to make?
Well, the genesis of it was, if you go back, was that the government of the time said, Wellington, you need to work together. And so that was the original plan. And the concept was right, but it drifted. And there was, and Jeff will tell you that there was so many balls in the air. And then was it late last year, the mayor said, look, this is where we're heading. So we had an independent review done by Glenda Hughes. And then, in fact, not that long ago, we voted whether we should continue or restructure, and it got the chair at the time voted, so it was a 6-5 thing. So there wasn't a lot of unanimous decision in the amongst the mayors. And so what's happened, and if you go back to when it was set up, we were the quickest way of setting it up was to actually then go to get the regional council to collect the regional rate, because otherwise we were going to go through a process of which we'd been through for 15 years. We're all in, but we pick our own rate and put our money in, and then when someone says, "Oh, we're not going to get anything out of this," so they decide next year we're not putting our money in. So the regional council was not mandated to be a economic development agency. That was changed, so they could collect the regional rate. What's happened? And in fact, we had that discussion yesterday. It is simply my view. It has now been hijacked by the regional council. Yes. And so we'll see, I think, quite a change, because there'll be a lot of, they are now the secretariat's being, what's the word? It's being modified, reduced, and they are going to be doing. So I again suggested yesterday at a mayoral forum, and can I tell you, I was probably a lone voice. So we will see, but we need to be very careful. I think we will see it being channeled into some pet projects that the regional council want to see happen. And that wasn't the intent. I go back to saying it needed to be reduced, it needed to be looked at closely, because I'm not doubting that we've got to have that regional approach, being in favour of that at all. But the very first meeting we had with the President Minister, Minister Bishop and Minister Simeon Brown, and during the meeting, the Minister said, "This thing's a dog." So I suggest, well, we're not going to get much engagement with central government if the Minister thinks it's a dog. So, but anyhow, that's where we're at. That was the latest. I don't know whether you're going to hit me,
Through the chair, yes, look at this. I guess what Wayne was trying to, what his wish was trying to describe is that there was an independent secretariat, if you like, that just operated under the auspices of the Wellington Regional Council. When the regional CEs as a collective and responding to concerns expressed by the mayors sought a review and I guess a sharpening of focus as to what that secretariat was doing. Greater Wellington took the opportunity to absorb that secretariat to within their organisation. So now it's no longer got that aura of independence, which is, I guess, supporting what the mayor said about it, has been taken over in effect. They have reduced the size of the secretariat, and they have slightly narrowed the scope of activity that they're going to be involved with. But in so doing, those activities have perhaps taken on more of an environmental focus and less perhaps of that broader economic development view. And the meeting yesterday, I guess, just reaffirmed
if that was the direction that Greater Wellington now going to take this going forward. At the same time, there was a suggestion that they would be calling upon officers from various councils on the basis of levels of interest to support some of the work streams that they're proposing to undertake. But at this stage, there doesn't seem to be a lot of scope for a council like Upper Hutt to want to either get involved or to contribute any staff resource to those activities. To give you an idea as to how extensive that takeover has been, for example, the Secretariat previously had an identified function for dealing with iwi that has been completely disbanded, and that will be done through the Greater Wellington functionaries who undertake that task. So they'll do it not only for Greater Wellington, but they'll do it for the Secretariat going forward. Yeah, look at it. Our ability to influence is pretty minor, to be honest.
Yes, Your Worship.
And you think about the concept and the excitement, I think, when it was set up and what we should do, because it works in every other region. Major regions, Auckland, Tauranga, Waikato, it works perfectly. But if you look, I mean, there are areas, of course, where it's been successful and things, but if you look at that broad scope of what we set out to do on that regional approach, if you think about today, and I said that yesterday, on every statistic, the Wellington region is the last in the country, just about. And I mean, it sounds a little dramatic, but in lots of areas where this was meant to progress, you're not allowed to use the word GDP anymore, that's a dirty word, but and enhance the region, well, it's been a failure. Because the statistics prove it hasn't. So anyhow, we'll continue to fight.
So, Your Worship, just coming back then to what is the outcome of this? Because if we don't make a change, then next 6 weeks' time, we're going to get another report about all the.
There is change. We were told that yesterday. We need to monitor what the change is.
So what guidance are we giving to the officers about where to from here, so that we don't have the same conversation in 6 weeks' time?
Well, I'm sure that our officers get what we're saying, but they will be faced, I'm sure, around an officer level as the same issues we face at a political level.
So through you, Chair,
Yes,
I
yes,
think what we'll do is, if there has been a conversation just recently in the past few days that there is some change, why don't we wait to see what that change is? Is it a change that actually sits with, that we're comfortable with, that meets our objectives as a council? But I certainly get what His Worship the Mayor and the CEO are saying about the size of our, if it's more the way that it has, that one council has taken a stronger lead, then as a smaller council, it's going to be very hard for us to influence any real effective change. I see the cost savings when it comes to consultants, and I see that with water, 1/3, 2/3, it certainly helps us with costs if that's what we're looking at. But let's wait and see what comes out, because I'm assuming that would have to be distributed, Your Worship, to these changes that we're going to have to be told as governance what they are.
Yes.
Through the Chair, I'm sure I can circulate the information
Thank
that
you.
was presented to the Mayoral Forum.
Yes, sir. Yep, absolutely.
And that would be great. Then we would get a direction, Chair, as to
Are we able to get the independent report as well? Is that public?
The one that you used it. I'm not
Yes.
sure. I'll check, but yeah, I don't have a problem. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to move.
Before you do, I've got a question, sorry, on this paper. Sorry, well, I, 48A landscapes. What about one? Sorry. So it says that we're working, I know that we have lots of working parties that our team engage with and things like that. So it's really great to see that under the comments, we're working with the landowners that are specifically, but then when I go back to the status, are we actually getting people outside of that group, and what size is that group? The landowners that are around the landscapes, do we? I know the size of the SNA group that you're working with, yeah, so I just.
Through you, Chair, we have through multiple iterations and continual I guess review of those extents, we have approximately 150 landowners private landowners remaining. The rest of our ONFLs are in public ownership. So we are intending to soon go out to those landowners. We've had a little bit of conversation in regards to the golf courses particularly because they need a little bit more in terms of their ongoing maintenance. But so that's we're intending to do some pre-consultation with those landowners and really clearly explain what 48A may mean for them. And any changes of that may impact on their properties themselves.
Yes.
But that is the intention going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Chair, I think we got a very clear steer from one of the council workshops that we came to recently that landowner consultation was something that you strongly sort of pushed, for want of a better word, us to do. So we've taken that on board, and that's our next step. We were just contemplating the landscapes plan change within the sort of context of other plan changes that we might need to bring forward. And so we were kind of sort of holding off on that consultation until we really understood what our prioritisation was for our work programme. Looking at what's the most advanced plan change, 48A is the most advanced of our plan changes, and so that's something that we'll be focusing on, unless anything comes through from the RM reform that requires us to be able to trump that. That's kind of our next on our sort of hit list in terms of plan changes going forward.
Councillor Ultra.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wondered if it's possible to enact SNAs in two separate pieces, so one for public land and one for private land.
Through you, Chair, I think we're waiting to see what the National Policy Statement on Indigenous Biodiversity will say on that. That's one option that could be considered, but I think that we need to wait and see what the National Policy Statement says, because what we don't want to do is sort of set our plan change based on a certain set of criteria through the existing policy statement that then changes through the new policy statement. Sorry, see that significance sort of criteria is something we'll place in monitoring.
Sorry, through you, Chair, actually, I believe yesterday or a couple of days ago, government has referenced that particularly those changes to the NPSIB will be about that criteria. And so that will impact on, we may need to relook at the ecologist assessments that we have already done to see if those continue to meet the SNAs the draft SNAs that we have, whether those continue to meet that criteria. However, just as a note, 48A does not seek to do anything with those SNAs. It is purely about the outstanding natural features and landscapes. So the draft SNAs will continue to stay on hold until such time that the NPSIB has been gazetted and we have confirmed changes that we can work with in terms of that. But 48A is purely about the ONFLs themselves.
Okay, so Councillor Bentley has moved the recommendation.
Sorry, it's still on the same. I just want to know that with the 130 landowners that we've got, should there be anything that comes down, you are keeping them up to date with the comms? I mean, they're not just waiting in limbo knowing that we've been quite advanced with this. We do want you to communicate with them.
Yeah, through you, Chair, we are planning on doing a big sort of update of all our plan changes on our website very shortly. Part of that is how we integrate the RM reform comms into that piece. So that will be sort of forming part of that piece of work that we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Chief.
All right, who seconded it? Councillor Griffiths. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. So our next item is Director's Report, Strategy, Partnership and Growth. And that is on page 59. So, Director, where am I looking? Oh, there you are, Liz. Anything particular you want to raise?
Okay, so I need to take questions.
Yes, Councillor Griffiths.
Hiya, thanks through you to the director. Around policy item 6.6, review of the gambling policy is commenced. Noted we had a closing of the postie place, with a cap on our pokies. Would that policy review look at the sinking lid or stagnant numbers around at the same time? Have you got any update or any information around where those being disposed of gone?
Through you, Chair, the policy will look at the environment at the time of its review or it being reviewed. I'm just looking at the acting strategic policy manager if she has anything to add to that.
Not at this stage, so the review's at a fairly early stage and just exploring all of the impact assessments that are needed. So we'll come back to you shortly with options when we're a bit more clear on the proposed policy.
Any other questions? Councillor Swales?
So I'm looking at the upcoming name of initiatives and things like that. So the remote building inspectors one that's coming up proposed to make virtual building inspectors an option. Are there fish hooks in that?
Through you, Chair. Yes, I thought so. Yes. Through you, Chair, the team have already started to look in the space, and if I'm not recalling incorrectly, and I'm about 99% certain I'm correct, there's so many things that come out of central government, this was one of the sector engagement pieces, and we responded to that and pointed out some of those issues and impracticalities for the sector. So, you know, no opposition to the concept of remote inspections if it works. The reality for Upper Hutt City and the proximity of the buildings relative to where our offices are based is that without a substantial sort of centralisation of remote inspections and a large investment, it wouldn't be something that would yield a lot of efficiency for this organisation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify that. So through you. So you're basically saying it wouldn't be something that we would need to do. You just keep doing the inspections by physical inspections.
Yes, through you, Chair. I guess what I don't want to do is I don't want to appear that we are disinterested in finding efficiencies and better ways of working, but there are more cost-effective ways that we can yield efficiency out of inspections than 100% remote inspections. That makes sense. It makes more sense if you are a reg authority with sparse inspections. We don't have that issue here.
Your Worship, were you going to?
I was going to move it.
Oh, good on you. Okay. Moved by His Worship, seconded by me. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. All right, public exclusion. We will now move into public excluded. I'll move it. Seconded by Councillor Griffiths. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much to the people viewing online. And it is 5:25. Thank you.